So you have allergic diseases, you have neurological diseases and autoimmune diseases, and obesity suddenly appear around 1989. And so there's a number of things that could be blamed for it. Well, the CDC thought it may be the vaccine schedule. Let's check. So they looked at one vaccine, which is the hepatitis B vaccine. They looked at kids who had gotten it in the first 30 days, and then they looked at kids who had not gotten it in 30 days. In other words, kids who got it later or didn't get it at all. And they compared these two groups. And among the kids who got it in the first 30 days, there was I think it was a 10,000% increased risk for a later subsequent autism diagnosis if you got in the first 30 days.
Wow.
So they immediately knew what was causing it. Oh, I know it was 11.35, so it's 1,135% increased risk. And so they knew immediately, it's called a relative risk of 11.35. If you have a relative risk of 2, causation is presumed. This was 11.35. The link between cigarettes, smoking a pack of cigarettes a day for 20 years and getting lung cancer is a relative risk of 10. This was 11.35. So they knew.
Hey gang, it's me, Dr. Steve, and we're entering into an age where virtually every suspicion the American people have ever had over the last 30 to 50 years has been confirmed. And I'm not the first to say it, but it's all by God's grace. And the place where the elites are running the most scared right now, as I'm sure you guessed, is in the area of health. A lot of lies have been perpetuated over the last 50 years, lies which made millions of Americans sicker and made very few elites very, very wealthy. But that's all coming to an end here. Here's a quote from RFK Jr. himself. The FDA's war on public health is about to end. This includes its aggressive suppression of psychedelics, peptides, stem cells, raw milk, hyperbaric therapies, chelating compounds, ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, vitamins, clean food, sunshine, exercise, nutraceuticals, and anything else that advances human health and can't be patented by Pharma. If you work for the FDA and are part of this corrupt system, I've got 2 messages for you. Preserve your records and pack your bags. Joining me today to discuss these things is my favorite doctor, Dr. Kelly Victory. Kelly Victory is an emergency preparedness expert and member of the Leadership Council at Harvard School of Public Health. And she's here today to give us the inside scoop on exactly how Big Pharma, the FDA, and all the other elitist organizations have been systematically keeping we the people unhealthy and unwell. Speaking of wellness, the Wellness Company is offering courageous conservatives an amazing discount on their medical emergency kit and other products. Just scan the QR code on the screen or click the link below for $45 off with code Turley. Dr. Victory, welcome. Great to see you again. Your name is so perfect for our time, this rising golden age. Welcome, welcome.
Well, thank you very much for having me, Steve. I'll tell you, your intro is spot on. Without question, the elites are, in fact, running scared and with good reason. I love that post by Robert Kennedy Jr. It made my day when he did it. And I hope that he will follow through with these commitments.
Yes, and it's quite the mouthful, too.
Yes.
Very impressive listing there. I mean, he's been studying this now for years. Mm-hmm. He has an amazing testimony of how he was dragged in kicking and screaming and kicking against the goads into the area of wellness and health. You've been on the front lines of this for a number of years now. So do you agree with Bobby Kennedy's assessment that the FDA in particular is involved in suppression, particularly suppression, more naturalistic methods, therapies for health? And if so, why? What is behind that suppression?
Oh, I think without question. I think the facts are irrefutable with this. There's an entire cabal that has been involved in suppressing the truth about health and wellness and has created a disease system. We don't
Mm,
have a healthcare system here in the United States. We have a disease care system, and it's very, very lucrative for many people, not the least of which are hospital systems and insurance companies. But certainly the FDA, the CDC, the NIH, and all of the other three-letter organizations in the federal government have stood to make tremendous amounts of money. This entire thing fundamentally boils down to power, control, and money in no particular order. The pharmaceutical companies certainly do not want people to know that there are safe, readily available, effective, inexpensive things like vitamin D, that simply by supplementing vitamin D, you would drastically reduce your chance of getting any cancer
mm,
or any infectious disease. So instead they try to suppress that information. They try to keep it from the public, or they try to regulate it such that people can't get a hold of it. We certainly saw that during COVID. We knew very early on that hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin would be largely effective against COVID. But those drugs are off patent, they are dirt cheap, they are readily available, and therefore the pharmaceutical complex was never going to let them see the light of day. So they ridiculed, criticized, canceled, threatened any of us who promoted those medications because they wanted us to defer to their wildly expensive new drugs like remdesivir and Paxlovid, and things that would make them billions of dollars. And
right.
when you look, at what happens in other countries, there's a reason we can talk on end, Steve, about the ill health of Americans. We have an epidemic of chronic disease, which is what Bobby Kennedy Jr. has rightly pointed out. More than 1 in 3 Americans is obese. Okay, and
Yeah.
this isn't because Americans have less willpower than the French, the Italians, the Germans. It's simply because the foods we eat here are
Yeah.
toxic. We are
Yes.
poisoning ourselves.
Yes. Yes. Power, control, and money. That's an unholy trinity there. Um, I'm assuming that that's what's behind the revolving door between regulatory agencies and the industries that they're supposed to be regulating. It's a problem all across the board. I think one scholar calls it refeudalization, where billionaire and bureaucrat are kind of teaming up to basically rule the masses, as it were. In your view, just how in bed are big pharma and the FDA?
Oh, I think they are part and parcel. They are hand in hand. One of the things that most Americans don't know, and that is absolutely unconscionable, is that many people at the FDA and CDC and NIH own parts or the entirety of patents on drugs and therapeutics. Now, how
Mhm.
someone could not see that as an egregious conflict of interest
Yeah,
is
yeah,
beyond me. How somebody like Anthony Fauci, as an example, could own parts of a patent on a drug or therapeutic for which he is responsible for what, directly or indirectly, promoting or mandating to the masses is insanity. This
yeah,
is the definition of
yeah.
racketeering. This is the
Right,
definition of a
right,
kickback. So we
right.
cannot allow anybody in these agencies to have any financial interest in whether or not a drug or therapeutic makes it to market, or God forbid ends up on the childhood vaccine schedule, or God forbid is mandated to the public. So that has been going on for decades.
Yeah,
Then you point out you call it the revolving door. I call it more like whack-a-mole. Somebody gets out of the FDA or the CDC and the NIH, and next thing you know, they're
yep,
on the board of directors or a scientific advisor at Moderna or Pfizer, or they
yep,
are overseeing regulation at some big pharma
yep.
company. It's
Barney Frank sitting on the board of a bank that
Yes,
he supposedly, right? Yeah, you got it. Yep.
exactly,
Whack-a-mole.
exactly.
No, I love it. I'm gonna. All right, I'm getting rid of revolving door. I like whack-a-mole a lot better. You mentioned allowance here, and that leads to my next question. How was this allowed to happen? I mean, how did politicians not? I mean, I can't imagine politicians did not know about it because they're part of the whack-a-mole here. How did this happen?
Money.
Yeah.
Pharma is the biggest lobby in Washington, D.C. There is rarely, a politician, by the way, on both sides of the aisle, Republican or Democrat, who didn't take money, and big money, from Big Pharma. Okay. They control the politicians with this, they get them to turn a blind eye. Then you look at something like the fact that we are only one. The United States is one of two countries in the world, Steve, that allow pharmaceutical advertising on television, the other one being New Zealand. Okay. When Big Pharma gives advertising dollars to the media, it's not so that they don't run a commercial so they can sell another, dose or two of Ozempic. They are doing it so that they can control what those talking heads say. Roger Ailes, the former CEO of Fox News, said years ago that he wanted to eliminate pharmaceutical advertising on his network, but he couldn't afford to do it because they represented 70% of all of the advertising dollars that came into Fox News. So this is a big part. So you have to ask how this happened. It happens by control and money to our politicians, to our media. Then on top of that, here's another layer. All of our once storied medical journals, JAMA, Lancet, New England Journal of Medicine, they are fundamentally owned by Big Pharma. Big Pharma gives them the money to run the studies. And God help you if you want to get a study published that didn't come to the conclusion that the
Right.
pharmaceutical company paid for.
Already
Okay.
baked into
That's
the
how.
cake.
Yeah. So those medical journals right now are nothing more than the marketing arm for Big
Wow.
Pharma. Yeah, okay. It is trash, and it really, on top
Wow.
of that, leaves physicians like myself really with no place to go for a verifiable, place to get real data with integrity. And
Right.
then the last layer I would add in the fact that these same pharmaceutical companies fund the research labs at large academic institutions, places like Duke, Harvard, Yale, Princeton, Stanford. Their medical labs are largely funded by Big Pharma. So again, it's garbage in, garbage out. And we have got to return integrity to medicine and integrity to healthcare, integrity to science. And this is something that I believe firmly that Robert Kennedy Jr. will get behind. He understands the vast decades of corruption and fraud that have landed us where we are, on top of the fact that there's all of this money, control, power going on, that triad in Big Pharma and Big Ag and in the media.
Yeah. Yeah. You mentioned this is a perfect setup for where I'm going next, because you mentioned, all right, with all the journals, as it were, being compromised, where do I go?
Right.
How do I respond to all of this? And this isn't going to change overnight. I know you're on the medical board at the wellness company, which we
Mhm.
love, and they're ahead of the curve with the very niche nutraceuticals and emergency
Mhm.
kits that have ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine. What's your recommendation for what good patriots out there can do until this finally gets resolved, which is not going to be, it's not going to be overnight.
Well, the wellness company really was born out of the debacle that was COVID-19. For the first time in history, we saw an unprecedented intrusion of powers into the exam room, people who weren't invited there, the government, politicians, talking heads from public health. All of a sudden, for the first time, literally in my entire career as a practicing physician, 30 plus years, we have pharmacists refusing to fill prescriptions for legitimate, medications. We have, people being threatened, people's medical licenses being threatened for using FDA approved medications like ivermectin or hydroxychloroquine, which physicians have every right to do. That's what really birthed the wellness company. We are not fear mongers. We're quite the opposite. We preach, and I preach in particular, rational readiness. We
Yeah.
never want people to be in a position, again, Steve, where they are beholden to or at the mercy of the system,
I
whether it's
love it.
because we have a manufactured pandemic like we had with COVID, or if it's a natural disaster, a hurricane, an earthquake, whatever it is, if there's civil unrest, anything that would make it difficult for people to access a pharmacy, an urgent care, an emergency department, we want people to be able to have on hand already at their disposal a broad range of medications and therapeutics that would get them through at least the initial crisis. It's not going to substitute for all medical care going forward, but we have medications in these kits that include antibiotics, antivirals, steroids, inhaled medications for respiratory infections, medications for nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, things to treat an allergic reaction. And we have a broad range of kits so that people can go on and look at the contents of each, see which one or ones might be appropriate for them and their families. But the entire idea was to put control back in the hands
Back.
of
Yeah.
patients, to allow them to know that they have trusted physicians with integrity, who put our patients ahead of profits. We don't expect people to fly solo. All of these kits come with a telemedicine visit, as
Yeah.
well as a very detailed guidebook that helps you to understand how and when to appropriately use the medications. If you use one or a couple of the medications in the kit, you can get those refilled without replacing the entire kit. So it's really, I believe, a great value to people. And it was born, as I said, out of our experience with COVID. We never want people to be in that position again.
Absolutely. And I love the whole telemedicine dimension to it as well. It just takes advantage of our hyperconnectivity, the telecosmos that we're all part
Mhm.
of right now. It's so up to date. And it's, to me, it's like the perfect, there's scholars who refer to the future as archaeofuture, where we're bringing tradition and technology together. So we're both going back while you're going back to our traditions and so forth, while at the same time exploring new technologies like never before. Elon would be a perfect example of that. And so I love the rational readiness. We're like the first
Mhm.
generation that never prepared. All our
Right.
our parents, our grandparents, they you go into their cupboards and I mean they're just stacked with stuff. World War II, World War I generations, and now we get to prepare even at the medicinal level, and then be able to consult at the network level with telemedicine. It's the best of all worlds. That's what I love about what you guys are doing. So, gang, this is what I want you to do. You heard that term, rational readiness. Go to the link in the description or scan the QR code on the screen. Then you get to use promo code Turley, my last name, Turley. Use that at checkout, and you're going to save $45, and you're going to get free shipping on your order. The Products of the Wellness Company can literally save you and your family from having to rely on big pharma who are profiting from your sickness. You heard it here today. So don't wait.
Mhm.
Be proactive. Take action. Click on that link below. You know you need to do this. We all need to do that. I've got my kit, my wellness kit. You need to get yours. Click on the link below. Scan the QR code, whatever you need to do. Let's all make America healthy again together. Dr. Kelly Victory. Again, I love the name. We're living it. We're living in victorious times. It's amazing. Thank you for everything you've done. And like you said, you started this during a very dark period of time.
Mhm.
It's beautiful to see how all your efforts have just flourished into to an amazing moment of history right now.
Well, thank you for giving me the platform, Steve. I think it is really important. And again, we are working very hard to empower patients to have control. We are obviously against any mandates. We are pro medical autonomy. We think that people have the right to make decisions about what they take or what they don't take. And people have a right to have access to at least the basics of medications so that they are not at the mercy of a system that may be overwhelmed or otherwise otherwise limiting their ability to get a hold of things that they need, life-saving medications for themselves and their families.
Mm. From your lips to God's ears. Absolutely perfect. Thank you, Dr. Kelly.
Thanks for having me, Steve.